Okay, we're going to get rolling. So grab whatever food you have there, or desserts, or drinks, or anything. We'll get going here in just a second once we get this thing on tap. Okay, wait. That's the beginning. I need to get to. Good? Yeah. Okay, let's start with a word of prayer then. Father, thank you, Lord, for this evening that you have given us. We thank you that we can come together in fellowship and then study your word. So, Father, we ask that the Holy Spirit would fill us right now to illuminate us to your word so we can understand it and obey it. We pray now in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, the next one, if we can get that going. There we go. Did we do lift up the face? Did I do that last time? I can't remember where I left off at. Yes, I did? Yes? Okay, the next one then is to put a stumbling block before somebody. Leviticus 19:14, you shall not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shall fear your God, I am the Lord. So this passage obviously can be taken literally, right? And placing an obstacle in front of a blind person. But the idea goes a lot deeper than that. It became a metaphor for causing someone to sin, or intentionally misleading them, or even accidentally misleading them, or somehow taking advantage of the spiritual weakness of the person, or just exploiting them to some degree. And so it became a metaphor or a Hebraism of that you're putting something in someone's path that would cause them to stumble on that path. It could be a bad influence. It could be anything, manipulation, exploitation, false teaching. It encompasses a lot of things. It's not just like false teaching. It's anything that would harm another believer. Romans 14 will talk about this, but rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or cause to fall in our brother's way. 1 Corinthians 8:9, beware lest somehow this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak. Revelation 2:14, but I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold to the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel. So here's the basic concept. It's a maturity issue, and it's the idea that I don't want to cause somebody to see what I'm doing and cause them to sin, trip up, stumble, whatever you might be. So what do you mean by this? Well, a lot of times People are watching you, obviously, and they're looking at what you do. They're looking at how you behave, and they look at what you say. And so it could be verbally, the things you say, the things you talk about will betray that, and behavior can betray that. And like Paul will say, he goes, as you grow older in the Lord, you start realizing that you have certain liberties that you can do, and certain things in gray areas that allow you to do it, and it doesn't seem to be a problem for you. And again, we're talking about gray areas, and gray areas are preferences typically. You have a preference for this, and someone else doesn't have a preference for it. But what Paul was trying to get at is, if you make your preference a showcase of your liberty, then you're going to harm other people who don't have that liberty necessarily. So, for instance, one of the easiest ones to pick out is drinking alcohol in public. If you have the liberty to drink alcohol, then fine. But the problem is, the more you go up in leadership and the more people's eyes are on you, the more you have to curtail that in public because other people can see that. And the problem is, you could say, well, I have my liberty. I'm not an alcoholic. Yeah, I know. But the problem is, you can't use your liberty towards someone else that might be an alcoholic, that might be struggling with alcohol, and they can't just have a drink or two or whatever. They go on binges, and they have major problems and stuff like that. And so, one of the expectations I have for my staff and our deacons is they refrain from drinking in public. That if they're going to drink, you need to do it at home, because too many people will see you, and it causes too many people to stumble. People will say, well, that's legalistic. It's not. It's about a gray area of not causing weaker brethren to stumble. I mean, if you knew what I knew of how many people struggle with alcohol, you would probably think about that yourself, and how many people are actually watching you that have alcoholism. Or it could be drugs or anything like that, but alcohol is a big one. So we've had deacons in the past, and I've gotten rid of them, but deacons that were so stupid, they would post them drinking online and post it on their Instagram and Facebook and this and that. And I said, do you realize that everyone's seeing this? I said, do you realize that they're calling me saying, what are you doing? And they go, what? I'm just doing I can drink. Yeah, you can, but you're a deacon and everyone's watching you, and you're causing all these other people in the church to stumble. So because he was bullheaded, we got rid of him. But that's the kind of nonsense that people do, and they don't think about their surroundings. They don't think about how they're being seen or anything else. Another big thing about causing people to stumble is the way you dress. And whether that's women or men, you always have to be aware of how you're dressed. Unfortunately, today's rules go out the door. You can go to job sites, and there is no, rules for dress anymore, especially among teachers. They dress like they're going to the gym. They don't dress professional. You go into some professional places and you expect profession, and you don't get it. They're dressed like they're going to work in the backyard or something like that. And it's a lack of professionalism, I know. But it's this whole woke mentality of, well, don't judge how I look. Well, I am going to judge how you look, because the Scripture wants us to maintain modesty. And what does modesty mean? Modesty is not just for women. And a lot of men, unfortunately, think that modesty is just for women, that they need to, women need to be dressed modest. How you understand modesty is this: you dress appropriately for the occasion you're going to. And that goes for men as well. Men are the worst as far as dress is concerned. They don't dress appropriately to the occasion they're going. I've been at funerals, guys show up in thongs and shorts. You don't show up to a funeral dressed that way, right? And you go to weddings, you dress up for the wedding. You don't go in flip-flops and shorts, guys. And what we're starting to have in our civilization is not proper decor. They're not wearing what they should be wearing. And again, It all has to do with, am I dressed appropriately for the situation I am? Am I going to the gym? Then dress appropriately for the gym. But I don't wear the gym clothes to church. It doesn't make sense. You don't show up to work and the work requires you a steel-plated toe and you show up in Birkenstocks and just say, you have to accept me, this is the way I am. No, that's you being selfish. You have to dress for others, not yourself. That's how you should be thinking about it. So, like, you go in these offices, and these people are scantily clad. I mean, it's out of control, man. And these are professional people, especially teachers. They show up in the teacher's room, and they're wearing very seductive clothes. Tell me this. Why would a teacher show up to a classroom of high schoolers wearing mini dresses and high heels, like they're going to a cocktail party? Is that, to me, that's somebody putting it out there. Or it could be anything, you know. And so people say, well, you can't judge how I dress. Yes, I can. You're dressed immodestly. And the problem is the way you're looking is causing people to stumble. And a lot of people don't like that. But this is the problem of gray areas, and people don't even think about that. Another thing, to move on from that, and I think that's pretty clear, but the other thing is ostentatious wealth is another problem that causes people to stumble. So people want to show off their wealth. And they show it off by the cars they drive, they show it off by the things they carry, they show it off with everything. And I'm not saying you can't have nice things. I'm not saying that at all. But be wary of your environment when you're coming to an arena. And let's just say that probably the majority of people are poor or middle class or whatever. It doesn't help them when they see a millionaire flaunting their junk in front of them. It doesn't help them. It causes them to stumble. And that's another thing, is be wary of ostentatious wealth. Not everybody has made it. Not everybody has got it. And they struggle. And most people are struggling to meet financial debts. And it doesn't help them when you talk about a 3-week vacation to Europe. It doesn't help them. And so, we've had people in our church, and I've had to take them aside and say, you got to stop bragging. You are bragging every time you enter a room, and you name drop, and I know this guy, I know that guy. We went to the Bahamas for 2 weeks, and we went to here, and we did that. We went on an African safari, and we did this, and we went there, and it's like, enough. Everyone around you hates you. Okay? They just hate you. And you need to shut your mouth, because no one can go on an African safari. No one can go to a 3-week trip to Europe. No one can go to the pyramids. No one can drive a Ferrari, okay? Just don't do that. Just shut up. But they don't know how, the problem with their pride makes them brag, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good in front of everybody. So let's say you are wealthy. God bless you. Just don't show it. Just act normal. Don't brag. That, keep that stuff to yourself, because the people around you are trying to make ends meet, and it really stumbles them. Stuff like that, right? So that's the kind of things I'm talking about. Talking about like how you celebrate Christmas. Some people are offended if you have a Christmas tree. Fine. Then don't brag about your Christmas tree. Don't brag that you don't have a Christmas tree. Just do what you need to do, right? But don't make it an issue for people. Holidays and other things that you celebrate. Okay, fine. Keep that stuff to yourself. No one cares. And the problem is you'll get into a fight if you talk about things, and especially in gray areas. And the real issue then becomes real tricky is when you make the gray areas black and white issues. And you make these gray areas black and white issues, and you say, if you don't do this or if you do that, you're not spiritual. And that gets really problematic, because if you make a gray area a black and white issue, you're going into legalism at that point in time. And look, if it's your choice to do something, knock yourself out, okay? It's your choice. But like Paul would say, don't use it to hurt somebody. What's the quintessential example that Paul used? Well, he used a meat sacrifice to an idol. And Paul had the freedom, knowing that if he bought a piece of meat from the marketplace, that, you know, the animal had been sacrificed to a foreign god, he realized, you know, there's no God. There's no such thing as Zeus or, you know, any of these Greco-Roman gods. And so he had the freedom to say, well, I'll just buy a piece of meat and I'll eat it. No big deal. The problem is, what happened is Paul was doing that, and the Corinth church, who was really immature, really immature, carnal, really bad, they had a problem with it. Now, that's the funny thing. The Corinth church strained at gnats and swallowed camels. They didn't have a problem with some dude shacking up with his mother-in-law or a stepmother, but then they had a real problem with Paul eating food sacrificed to idols. That's classic legalist, classic. I know what do you want to talk? Immaturity. So Paul said, fine. If that offends you, that I'm eating meat sacrificed to an idol offends you, I just won't do it. I won't exercise my liberty, and I won't do it. And that satisfied them. And then he goes into, I'm not going to cause anybody to stumble. That's a very grave thing. And so that's the quintessential example he uses. So now then you have to apply that in gray areas and understand where your liberties are, what your weaknesses are, and you're always cognizant of how people are perceiving you, what they're seeing, what you're doing, what you're saying. And a lot of things, you know, this is the weird thing. People betray themselves on social media. They're really not thinking on social media. They post things, they repost things, they resend things, and the stuff is like clearly anti-Christian, clearly off the mark. Clearly, you shouldn't be posting this or reposting it or sending it to anybody. But it's almost like the person has like this dichotomy in their life. Well, I'm a Christian in my personal life, but whatever I put on Facebook or whatever I put on Instagram, it doesn't make a hill of beans. I'll put on the most vilest stuff on our social media and not think twice about it. And then people will call me or call the associates and say, hey, do you know what they're posting right now? Have you seen what they're putting on? And it's like, and the person's like, we have to call them out and say, hey, man, do you understand? What are you doing putting that? And they're like, what was wrong with it? I go, if I have to tell you what's wrong with it, that's even a bigger problem. And that ends up happening. And then, you know, it's not like this is the everyday person. This is somebody that's a volunteer somewhere. And I said, hey, man, you know, you can't be a leader in this ministry and be posting that kind of vile stuff, man. What are you thinking? And they're like totally clueless. And it's just like, wow, I can't even believe I'm having this conversation. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Be wary of what you're posting on your social media. Now, if you're in leadership, let me tell you how this works. When you're in leadership, you're more mature, which means you have more freedom, but you have less rights the more you go up in leadership in Christianity. Like Paul, he's not going to eat meat sacrificed to an idol. And that's the same thing. And you know, you become a Sunday school teacher, you become a deacon, you start serving somewhere that's very visible. You get on this stage and you sing or whatever. Dude, if all eyes are on you, you're in the fishbowl. No doubt about it, man. And I know what it's been like to live in a fishbowl. It's very difficult because you have. One time the guy told me, he goes, Brandon, you will have to be the pastor 24/7. You will never be able to take that hat off all of your life. And I said, that's fine, I get it. But again, going back to leadership, the higher you rise up, the less rights you have, and the more eyes are on you, watching you. And you don't realize it, but they are. And they're watching what you do, what you say, what you wear, how you think, everything, what you do for fun. all that stuff. Everything's in a fishbowl. A lot of people can't take it. They don't like being in the fishbowl because guess who gets included into the fishbowl? Your spouse and then your kids get included in the fishbowl. And so all eyes are watching not only you, but your spouse and your kids and how they behave. That's a pretty weighty thing. And a lot of people can't handle that. It's just too much. And so a lot of people don't, they buckle under that pressure. But what I'm saying is, look, you as an individual, the more you grow in maturity, the more freedoms you will have, but you will have to restrain yourself from using them in these gray areas. So, if you have the freedom to have a Christmas tree, then have a Christmas tree. But understand there's immature Christians that connect that to paganism, and it stumbles them. Now, here's the thing that you need to know. The less mature you are, the more restricted you are as far as yourself in gray areas. The more mature you are, the more freedom you have in gray areas. So when you're dealing with somebody that's immature, like they'll have a lot of rules for themselves and others that restrict them from doing hardly anything, okay? So they won't celebrate Christmas. They won't celebrate Easter. They won't, do those kinds of things. You're like, what is that? I said, that's immaturity. That's what that is. Because if you have freedom, then you would say, well, you can have a tree or not have a tree. Celebrate Christmas or not have. Well, that's not the right date. Yeah, I know. We all know that. We all know it's not December 25th. We all know that. Well, that was Saturnalia. Yeah, we know that. But you understand the intent behind it is the church was taking over these pagan holidays, and that's why they did that. I get it. I know. I know Easter is not connected to Passover like it should. I know. The church divorced itself from the Jewish roots. I know. I know the 40 days of Lent is the worship of Tammuz. I know. But if that bothers you, then just don't do it. But you can't put that on others. So what I'm trying to say is if you notice in your life you have all these restrictions, like in the old days, the fundamentalist says you can't go to the movies, can't go to rated R movies, you can't do this, you can't dance, you can't, women have to wear they can't wear pants, they have to only wear skirts. Men can only have comb overs if it's an inch above their ear, and they can't wear toupees. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I know. There used to be a thing called hairology in fundamentalism. And it's so stupid, man, and it was called hairology in fundamentalism, and they went through how a man can wear his hair with a comb over. So stupid, absolutely stupid. But that's the lengths the fundamentalists went to in creating legalism. Can't dance, can't do this, can't do that. It got really bad. And then you had prohibition in the early Americana, and that was all coming from fundamentalists and stuff like that, and got their way. But look what that led to. People still did it. It didn't stop it. So anyway, you can just go down the line on any gray area, and you have to think about it. Can I do this? Is this edifying? Paul will say things like, everything is lawful for me, and he's talking about gray areas. Everything is lawful for me, but he'll then qualify and says, but not everything is beneficial. So he's saying, look, there's some things I'm saying no to because I just don't get any spiritual edification out of that. Whatever was on his mind, I don't know. And he just said no to it. It wasn't being edified. Maybe for you, you can't. I know a lot of people that have been in the occult, and a lot of people will say they can't watch scary movies. That's fine. I get it, and they're freaked out about it because they were in the occult, in Satanism and witchcraft and stuff, and those movies really freaked them out. I get it. Okay, so that's going back on their background, and that's fine. But you can't say, and nobody should watch scary movies. Okay? You can't do that. That's something for you. If that bothers you, then okay, you refrain from doing that. And things like that nature. Food is another big issue. Food causes people to stumble big time, okay? Now, what does the scriptures tell you to do as far as when you go out to eat with people? What are you supposed to do? It says you're supposed to put a knife to your neck, which is a Hebraism, which means you go in there and you leave some food on the plate when you're gone. Don't start scarfing down everything and going at it like a glutton. The idea of having a knife to your neck is you're restricting how much you eat, and if you're still hungry, then when you go home and go eat then. But you don't pig out at somebody's house. You don't pig out at a restaurant. You don't do that. And plus, especially like in the Jewish home, you were going to somebody's home. And so, if you say, is there more? I want more. It's like, whoa, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. And so, a thing to think about when you're out eating with other people. Now, if you're by yourself, then eat all you want. I don't care. No one cares. But with other people that might be treating you, cooking a meal for you, you're providing for you, giving you hospitality, that's when you restrain yourself. Now, some of us have dietary restrictions and stuff like that. Like I have celiac, so I can't eat gluten. But if I go back to custom and you have no dietary restrictions, you must taste everything, but you don't have to eat everything. Okay, so if you went to a Middle Eastern home and they served you, you need to taste everything. The dessert, this, that, everything, because it's rude if you don't. But it doesn't mean you eat, if they give you a slice of cake, it doesn't mean you have to eat the whole cake. You just eat a bite as a good guest would do. You try out what they all offer you. But the way you leave the table is you leave some food left on your plate. That's how you do decor. That's how you do Middle Eastern, hospitality. If someone's serving you, you leave there. You don't scarf and lick the plate like that. Okay? Now, you have to tell your teenagers that, but there's a whole Middle Eastern way of handling food too. I know it's a whole big thing because let's talk about food in the sense of, let's say we're in the first century with Jesus. So in the first century, you got invited to dine with somebody. You actually went into their house, okay? So you didn't have restaurants or anything like that. And they would treat you with the highest respect. They would give you the best food that they had available to, that they could afford. And it was really a big deal to be treated that way. They washed your feet and the whole thing. But what was the point? The point is not necessarily the food. The point of eating a meal with somebody was for the fellowship. It was for the discussion. It was for being together with somebody, not having like the best food or this and that. The food wasn't necessarily the intent. Even though it was to be the best, that necessarily wasn't the issue. It was the company that you were keeping. This is why Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears me and opens a door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me. That's not a salvation. That's a call to fellowship. I want to fellowship with you by dining with you. So this is how we would communicate and talk with one another. So that's another area that you have to be cognizant of. Again, just think about this. If someone's taking you out and you know their socioeconomic status, do not start ordering steak and lobster, right? If you know their socioeconomic status and they're treating you, you order, the ham and cheese sandwich, okay? Don't go for the steak and lobster. That's not fair. So you have to be cognizant of the person because people will just, okay, steak and lobster, let's go, man. It's on you. I'm ordering everything on the menu. It's like, oh no, don't do that. You would be amazed of how crazy food makes people. It makes them crazy, especially if they get a free meal. They go nuts. It's like they've never eaten before. And it's like, are you kidding me? What is wrong with you? But anyway, the proverb is put a knife to your throat so you don't cause people to stumble. Okay, so we're talking about, gray areas. So you have holidays, you have the way you present yourself, right? The way you present yourself, you have the things you say. So one of the things that Scripture will talk about is to refrain from coarse talking, okay? Now, no one cares what you're saying to yourself in your own home or in your garage or whatever. But you get out in public and you start telling dirty jokes and you're really risque and talking like crazy. Hey man, you're going to cause people to stumble. That's immediately what they're going to pay attention to. Is how is this person talking? What do they involve themselves in? You may not be the author of what's being said, but if you're starting to hear really bad talk and language and these guys are really getting out of control, remove yourself. Remove it, because people are watching how you respond to the fraternity language, okay? And they want to know, is this guy different? Now, you don't have to make a scene or anything. Just slide away and not be a part of it, because everybody's watching you if you will take part in the coarse gesturing. That's what Paul is referring to. He's saying, don't get involved in things like that because it does hurt your witness. So, it's the things you say, things you do, things you wear. I think that pretty much covers everything. But if you have any questions, we can talk later. But that's the idea. Is I'm on the lookout to not cause people to stumble because of what I'm doing, and so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. That's why public sin is treated so harshly in the church. That's why there's church discipline. I've talked to you guys about church discipline. Because public sin, it's just it causes unbelievers to stumble, big time. Now if I want to, now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. So those are the gray areas. But what do you think the number one reason why unbelievers stumble with Christians? What do you think the number one reason is? The number one reason that people become atheists, people become agnostics, people go crazy is because they see hypocrisy in people, in Christians. And that's true. There is hypocrisy. No doubt about that. There is hypocrisy in Christianity. Yeah, and I totally expect that, because if a good segment of Christendom is not even real, there are the tares among the wheat, of course you're going to see hypocrisy, absolutely. So when someone tells me that, I said, you're totally right, but understand a category of them are not even real. And then the other category are immature, so they don't know any better. Another category are worldly, so they're blinded to that. Another category are carnal, which means they're ruled by their sin nature. And then the other category are mature. I said, so yeah, I totally understand. If you get any slice out of one of those categories except for the fully mature one, yeah, you're probably going to see hypocrisy. No doubt about that. And I have no problem explaining that to people. But that's what happens, is hypocrisy, just even religious hypocrisy. So Marx, he responded with Marxism because of his dad's religious hypocrisy. He saw his dad, I think, because Marx was Jewish, he saw his dad, I can't remember what denomination, they were Jewish, and I don't know if they were going Presbyterian or Lutheran, I can't remember what denomination they were. And he was like, Dad, I thought we're Jewish, and what are we going over here to become Christians over here? And he says, it's good for business. That was it. That was it. Good for business, huh? And of course, Marx developed Marxism, but he saw the hypocrisy with his father. And look, there's a lot of that, no doubt about that. And a lot of us even have to overcome that in our own lives. And we understand when we're trying to talk to people, look, don't look at the people, look at the one we should follow, which is Christ. Because he never was a hypocrite and was totally sinless. But that is what causes a lot of people to stumble in their lives. They just don't see a consistency, in their life. And again, what are people really looking for? They're not looking for perfection, if they're going to be honest. It's not perfect. It's consistency. Are we going to make mistakes? Are we going to take 2 steps backwards sometimes? Absolutely. But what is the general trail of the person? What's the trajectory? What's the projection of where this person is going? If they see this person going zigzagging all over the place and backwards and up and down and for 5 years they're non-existent in church and stuff like that, that really throws a lot of people off. But a consistent walk with the Lord, really, that's the biggest sell point, if you want to say that, to people who are unbelievers, is consistency. That's all they need to see is consistency, not perfection. So that's a big driver for that. Okay, any questions on that? And I'll move on. All right, cool. And I'm locked up for some reason. The whole computer's locked up. There we go. Did it move? Yeah, there we go. Well, it was. No. Rats. It's there we go, I think. Did it move? There we go. I don't know why it didn't move. That's crazy. Okay, another thing I'm just going to briefly cover is, and we talked about this with Noah, is to uncover nakedness. That's a Hebrew idiom. Leviticus 18, we'll talk about it. None of you shall approach anyone who is near of kin to him to uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. So uncover someone's nakedness means to have sex with them. And typically when you see it through Leviticus, it's unnatural sex. It's incestuous many times. But so it's a Hebraic expression for sexual relations, but typically it's incestuous. So like when we go back to Noah, we studied that before. They uncovered the nakedness of Noah, which means that the boy had sex with the mom. That's what that meant based on this idiom being found in Leviticus. It literally means to make the naked visible, is what it means literally. But again, it's to have sexual relations, and those sexual relations are typically incestuous. So here's another one, Leviticus 18, the nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. Again, that is incestuous. She is your mother, you shall not uncover. So basically it's saying you can't have sex with your mom. That's what God's putting down. And this is where the law is coming in for the first time in human history of forbidding incest with close family members. You shall not uncover her nakedness, the nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. Leviticus, a man who lies with his father's wife has uncovered his father's nakedness. That's what the guy in Corinth was doing. And again, it's all prohibition against incest, adultery, and that. And so when you apply this to Noah and what happened with Ham, that's what happened. And then that's why he curses Ham's his grandson, the child, Canaan. And the Canaanites were cursed because of that, because that was an incestuous relationship. And basically what Ham was trying to do is steal the headship of the father. That's what they were doing, and that's how they thought in those times where they want federal headship, and the way they have federal headship is to be the breeder of the family, basically, and then to take over the matriarch. And that's what kings did. Kings did that. They would take over another king's harem, or and bring them in, and that's what Absalom did with David. He took David's harem and basically was exerting his authority over David's harem. So you had that going on all through the Bible times. Let's go. Did we do to bear iniquity? I think we did. No, maybe we didn't. Let's do bear iniquity. Leviticus, if a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath and is a witness, he shall bear his guilt. Leviticus 10:17, why have you not eaten the sin offering in a holy place, since it is most holy, and God has given it to you to bear the guilt of the congregation? So the idea of bear iniquity, and you'll see this all through the Bible, and Jesus bore our iniquity, means to carry the responsibility and the consequences and the punishment for sin. That's a real easy one, but you'll see this all through the Old Testament, and obviously with Jesus, he bears our iniquity. You'll see other places of we bear each other's burdens, and that's another idea of taking on responsibility. Now, here's the question. This is, I think, an interesting thing that gets messed up a lot of times. It says you shall bear one another's burdens. And the way it's formulated is you only bear the responsibility for someone else when their burden is extreme beyond measure, if that makes sense. If everybody, the way Galatians is saying, is everybody has their own burden to bear every day. And so you get up, you put that burden on, and that's your burden, whether it's to go to work or do whatever you need to do, take care of kids, whatever, that's your burden. You do that every day. That's your normal course. No one should do that responsibility for you. That's yours. So if you have people coming in and bearing your burden, which is normal to you, you can pretty much guess that person is a codependent. Because what we're supposed to do is allow people to carry their own burden. When their burden becomes excessive and it's beyond what they normally can carry, that's when you run in to help. This is important because on two extremes, you will see parents raising kids not allowing the kid to carry the burden that he should carry, right? They do everything for the kid. And the kid's like 18 years old. And it's like, he does nothing. He does nothing. Mom's cleaning his room. He doesn't clean his room. You know, he's like a king on a throne or something like that, you know, and everyone serves him. He doesn't do anything. And a lot of parents are doing that to their kids. And so guess what? They go to these crazy colleges, then they come out, and then as far as a work ethic, they don't have a work ethic, man. Because they have never been shown how to bear their own responsibility. We're having a lot of kids, guys, that don't have any critical thinking whatsoever or problem-solving ability. Have you noticed that? Like, they can't figure themselves out of a box. And you're like, why? Well, because here, the normal responsibility that they would have been given, you have to figure things out. You have to come up with solutions. And the problem is if mom and dad are coming to the rescue all the time, there's no creative thinking of trying to come up with your own solutions. Look, I lived in an era, and you probably lived in an era, where we left at 8 o'clock in the morning in summertime. We didn't come back till it went dark, right? And all day long, we were just playing, riding bikes, doing this. And I know it's different now, but I couldn't go to my mom and dad to figure out, what can I do right now? Can you set up a play date? I can't do anything right now. There's no play dates. Figure it out. Go find a friend. Go ride bikes. Go do whatever. We'll see you when the lights go down, when the outside lights come on or whatever it is. And we as kids figured it out, right? We figured out games to play. We did this. We did that. We figured out. It was actually problem solving. Right? Problem solving of our boredom, right? That's what we did. Well, let's go have a good time. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. We were just crazy. But here's what happens. What if you stay inside all day long in summer, because you're out as a teenager, you don't work, you don't play sports, you don't do any extracurricular activity. All you do is stay in a room and play video games. Okay? They're not problem solving. And by the way, they're not relational either. They have horrible relational skills. They can't even look you in the eye or shake your hand. They give you the limp, shake. Shake a hand, man. They don't even know how to do that because they're not out with people and they're not interacting with people. And so they're social misfits and socially awkward. And it's like, yeah, we can't keep raising this, man. And so they can't problem solve. And so they're perfect drones. So they work at places, and here's what you do. Pull the lever, okay. And do that all day, okay. They don't think past that. They're just pulling levers all day long. There's no problem. So how am I going to make this job better? How can I make this easier? How can I help the boss figure out how to do this more efficiently? How many more widgets could we make? They're not thinking like that. They just told me to pull this lever every 5 minutes, and that's what I'm doing. Dude, what's happened to people? Right? I mean, so you put them in a job, hey, figure this out. They can't figure it out. I'll ask Siri. Maybe she'll figure it out for me. So we have a problem with parents not giving the proper burden to children. They should be carrying something every day. Okay? Now let's go to senior saints. It is very important, especially with aged parents, that they stay as independent and capable as possible, okay? Because you want them to function on their own as much as possible. And this goes from every psychiatrist, every psychologist, every biblical counselor I've ever said or ever read. Do not do for them which they can do for themselves. Do not do that. People feel sorry, they run to the rescue, and the problem, every time you do that, they become more dependent and less independent on you, or on themselves, and they start shutting down. They start imploding. All of a sudden, they stop walking. Their legs go way premature than they should. Because why? Someone's catering to them. Someone's running to get their meals. Hey, if they can drive, have them drive to Taco Bell and get their own food. It's important they get out. It's important they drive. It's important they walk. But this is what happens. The senior saints get catered to, and the people start taking their responsibility away from them, and they die faster. Because someone's always doing something for them. And look, don't get me wrong. There are times when you have to step in, man. Someone's dying, someone's having they can't walk or whatever it is. But you know what I'm talking about. There were times where we did too much for them. That wasn't right. We should have let them do that and handle it. So here's what happens. The psychology of this is when the person feels they don't have to do anything, they will surrender to life. They just shut down. They just shut down. I can't do anything anymore. I can't do anything. I'm old. No. Look at Donald Trump. How old is Donald Trump, man? Late 70s? What is he? Is he 80? Is he 78? Saturday's his birthday. That's right. Look at that guy. That guy's unstoppable, man. That guy doesn't even hardly sleep. Look how much activity that guy does. How does he do it? I don't know. Maybe, it's good genetics. I'm just not that way. No. You haven't walked in 5 years. You haven't walked around the block. Don't give me this. I'm too old. It hurts. Yeah, no kidding, it hurts.
No pain, no gain.
And I've had these discussions with my own family members. Hey, get a little 5-pound dumbbell and let's start doing something. You're losing your muscle mass. Oh, it hurts. No kidding, it hurts. It's called soreness. That's how it works. Hopefully you do it enough and you don't have the soreness. But what am I saying? The problem is we make the mistakes on both aspects. We make the mistake with kids, we carry too much burden for them, and we start carrying too much burden for the elderly. And what ends up happening, it hurts them and it hurts the kids because it shuts them down quicker. So, I don't know what your plans are for your parents, but if you want to kill them fast, do everything for them. Just say, we'll spoon feed you. Just lay there. Don't ever move. And we'll stick an IV to your arm, and we'll just feed you intravenously, and you sit there and watch the Golden Girls all day long. That's what happens. I'm just telling you. Everybody's got to carry a burden every day. It's very important. Even for yourself, no matter what age. I got to get up. What do I got to do today? I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to run to the store. Good. Do it. Good. That's good. You're staying involved. Go out to lunch. Go to church. Go to Bible study. Get out of the house. Otherwise, you're going to start caving in. Okay? All right. Obviously, with Messiah, talking about bearing, he shall bear their iniquities. Obviously, Messiah, did not commit sin, but he carried ours. And so what you have, the central theme of bearing iniquity is the substitutionary atonement, obviously, with the Messiah. And what is this? It shows you how God rectifies the sin problem. That he can't, because he's holy and he's just, he can't just say, well, boys will be boys and sweep it under the carpet and pretend it didn't happen, grade on a curve. There has to be a reckoning of punishment for the sin, which then brings justice to the situation. And so what God has set up is a substitutionary basis. Now, you all know that, but the reason for it is there is no other way to pay for this other than the person sitting in hell for the entire eternity. And because why? You say, I don't understand why one sin can send me to hell for all eternity. Well, it's because of who you're sinning against. You are sinning against a being who is eternal. And because he's an eternal being, it requires an eternal punishment on the individual. Hence, hell. Okay? And so, like I've told you, the necessary substitution can't just be an animal. The animals just covered it up. Yom Kippur covered the sin for 1 year. But someone had to come to where they can make the penalty payment that would pay back this eternal being with an eternal payment. And that's where you see the coalescing of the God-man, the Messiah, Jesus. And that's why, like I've always said, even on Sunday, you have to get the person of Jesus right, because if you don't, you'll mess up the work of Christ. What do you mean? Well, God is spirit, and he can't die. Okay, so how is God going to make atonement when it requires a substitutionary death? Well, he takes on an additional nature. He becomes a man. Okay, but he's not just a man. He's God in the flesh. So a man can die, but a man's death is not enough to pay an eternal debt. So Jesus can't be a man. I mean, just only a man. He has to have both natures, because as God he can't die, but as a man he can. But the death has to pay it back. Well, the only way the death can pay it back of a man is if the death is from an eternal being. And that's where his deity comes in. And so everything harmonizes with God's justice, with God's mercy, his love, but also paying himself back. And this is the uniqueness of Christianity. I want you to understand this. It's 1, 2, 3 for us. It's like the ABCs, and I know you know this. But when you go outside of Christianity, there is no ideology that accounts for this. In any false religion that's out there, they have no way of paying back their God. And if they have a way, that God is not eternal. And so they're paying their gods back by their works and stuff like that. And they don't understand the nature of sin, that it's an eternal crime. And so that's what makes Christianity unique. Pretty much when you go outside of Christianity, all the other false religions are the same. Work your way to pay back God. And they believe you really can. That's it. That's simple. That's New Age. That's Christian Science. That's Scientology. That's everything. Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, Roman Catholicism. That's all it. Pay back God with your own works. That's all it is. So that's why substitutionary atonement is central. Now then the question is, if one person can do that, he only needs to do it one time. It only needs to be one time. And so that's common sense. But then tell me this, why at every Catholic Mass do they re-sacrifice Christ on their altar? Every time. When the writer of Hebrews says he was crucified once and for all because he paid the eternal debt with an eternal life. So, you have all these things that once you get that right, then all the counterfeits don't even make sense anymore. So that's why it's really important to get that. Okay, we'll stop there. Any questions before we take a 5-minute break? Yes, go ahead. Get a mic.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing about the importance of bearing our own burden and talking about the two extremes as well. As you were speaking, I became curious your thoughts on, while it is important for us to bear our own burdens, at what point, because I do think, as you were mentioning, there is a right to take pride, dignity in our work ethic, right, in our identity in Christ, that sort of thing. But I think there's also something where, as people, we can be too prideful, or I can take this all on my own, or I can cast my burdens upon the Lord. And so how do we develop the discernment and the humility to be able to reach out to share those burdens? Because I do think that is something that many of us might struggle with.
Yeah, so that's a big problem for a lot of people. And here's how it goes. People start spinning plates, man. And before you know it, they got 14 plates. Before you know it, they have 17 plates. And they're not humble enough to say to themselves, I can't do it all. And so they lack humility. It's an issue of pride. So here's the thing. In order for someone to reach out, they sometimes have to come to the end of themselves a lot of times. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way, but they have to come to the end of themselves. And what ends up happening is burnout. I start having medical problems, physical problems, or I start having psychological problems. Some people will go into depression because they start having massive anxiety. And you as a counselor would know, a lot of people have anxiety. Well, what's the basis of anxiety? The basis of anxiety is fear of the future, that I can't handle it all. So the more they put on their plate, the more anxiety feel they get, and they start having panic attacks or whatever. And so the problem they do with is, well, I got to keep functioning like this. Instead of reducing what I have to keep functioning. So you know what they do? They medicate to keep functioning at that level. And so, they'll get anti-anxiety meds, and they'll just keep rolling. And they'll keep doing the same pace, right? And so at some point, I guess how would I know I'm doing too much? You know you're doing too much when you don't have enough time in the day to do all that you're trying to do. You know you're doing too much if you probably have more than probably one job or two. If you're spread that thin and you're I don't know, you're working four different things, that's probably a good sign you're not doing it. Let me give you a stat. The average 1%er works, I think it's, I'm going to say it tomorrow night, they work 60 to 67 hours a week. That person's on the way to burnout if you're working that much. And look, a lot of people wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I work so hard. Yeah, you're making some money, but you're going to die early because of that. We want to work hard, but, Your hours are a big deal. How many things you're involved in is a big deal. And so you would start having health problems. So my thing is, if you're seeing yourself and you say, I have a lot of anxiety, I have a lot of depression, I think I have too much on my plate, then that's when you need to reach out and say, I need help. Now, what's the help going to look like? If you're going to a doctor and all they're doing is putting you on anxiety meds, that's not going to solve the problem. That's temporary. That gets you through the season. You need to talk to somebody. You need to counsel with somebody. You need someone to get a third party and say, okay, let's look at what you're doing and let's reevaluate things. And that's the problem. And I've seen it too many times. People are not being honest with themselves. They're just not. And it's a principle of I can do it all. I can do it all. And unfortunately, here's another problem, and you would know this as a counselor. People's identity is wrapped up in this. Their identity is wrapped up in what they do, and they feel if they can't do it, they're a failure. They feel that they're not being able to measure up or do what other people are doing. And so the minute someone puts their identity in what they do, they're cooked because they got to keep the image up. And whether that's a doctor, lawyer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, it's hard. So simple answer is honesty with themselves. And then I need to talk to a navigator. And a navigator is someone that knows how to guide the person through that. Because like I've said, I think I said this last week, if you go to your peers and they don't have knowledge of this, they're going to say, well, I'll just pray for you, and you'll get that support, and that's fine. And maybe they should say, yeah, you need to go talk to somebody that can help you. So that's my admonition. Don't try to handle this on your own. You've got to talk to a professional. Whatever. But please, don't get me wrong. You might have to medicate, okay? You might have to medicate, especially if you're having panic attacks and anxiety disorders. You have to smooth that out. You have to get that figured out. But that's a season. Okay? But long term, the way you cure anxiety is you have to think correctly. It really in cognitive research, which goes right along with the Bible, what you believe affects how you behave. What you believe affects your attitude. What you believe affects your emotions. And so long term, yeah, you can take a pill and you might need to take a pill. But long term, you have to start thinking differently. That's the long-term solution. So anyway, I hope that helps anybody. That's a long answer, sorry. Okay, all good? Take a 5-minute break. We'll do some current events about the LA riots.
Hey everybody, I need your help, and I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm, and so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel. And we film in Turkey and different places like that. So it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us and our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.
In this
Okay, we're going to get going on some current events. I got some announcements to say. So, what's the date today? Okay, next Wednesday is our last Wednesday before summer break. And then after that, we have the business meeting on the 25th, I believe that is. And then we go off for July. We take July off. So next week is our last week. But Paula is needing sign-ups for next week's dinner. We need, it looks like side dishes, salads, desserts. So if you can bring a side dish, salad, or dessert, she has the sign-ups, and that would help us out on that last dinner. And again, next week is our last class, then business meeting, and then we go into July break. And usually July is a dead month, but we'll come back in August. Okay, there was something I was missing. No. The what now? Oh, yeah, what am I talking about? Next week is a panel. What am I talking about? Yes. Okay, so next week you definitely want to come. I've got 3 guys lined up. I've got Tom Hughes, Billy Crone, and Bill Koenig is coming. So I'm going to have a panel up here. We're going to talk about all kinds of current events and stuff like that. So it's going to be a really good night, really fun night, hearing from all 3 of those guys. And so, yes, that's right. I totally forgot about that. So that's next week. Next week, make sure you're here. Come early. Try to get a seat because we'll probably run out of seats that night, having all 3 guys. Okay, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about who's really behind the LA riots, because we know there's a bunch of numbskulls. We know there's a bunch of useful idiots, but it's important to know that this is not just simply a grassroots movement that has started. What you have to understand that this has been going on all over the place in the United States, in Western society, and around the globe. And we saw this back in, 2020 with Antifa, BLM, and all that junk, and that came to fruition. But now we're having this. So let's dig in about what's happening. Okay, so if you're not caught up on this, obviously Trump has been sending ICE to take care and get rid of illegal aliens, particularly criminal illegal aliens, the worst of the worst, okay? So this is from the Department of Homeland Security. It includes murderers, sex offenders, other violent criminals. Let me go through the list real quick so people know that Trump is not going over to elementary schools and going after children like they said, or just making up all kinds of lies. They're going after the worst of the worst. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Quan Chon Phan or something like that, from Vietnam. Criminal history includes conviction of second-degree murder, was sentenced to 15 years to life. That's who they went after. Rolando Vernercia, I don't know how to pronounce it, Enriquez, from the Philippines. Criminal history includes burglary, sentenced to 4 years in prison, sexual penetration with a foreign object with force, assault with intent to commit rape. So he was taken. Lionel Sanchez Laguna, 55-year-old from Mexico, criminal history, discharging a firearm at an inhabited dwelling and vehicle in Orange County, sentence 365, battery on spouse or cohabited, willful cruelty to a child, driving under the influence, assault with semi-automatic firearm, personal use of a firearm, okay? Armando Ordez, sexual battery, receiving known or stolen property, petty theft. Francisco Sanchez Arguello, grand theft larceny, possession of prohibited weapon. Jose Gregorio Ortiz, conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute 5 kilograms or more cocaine on board a vessel. Victor Mendoza Aguilar, possession unlawful paraphernalia, possessing controlled substances, assault with a deadly weapon, not firearm, obstructing a public officer. Delfino Martinez, assault with a deadly weapon, great bodily injury. Jose Cristobal Butron, 43-year-old illegal alien Peru, robbery, result in 10-year sentence. Jordan Escobar, distribution of heroin, cocaine, and domestic violence. Jesus Morales, conspiracy to transport an illegal alien, criminal history, yeah. Okay, so this is who they're going after, okay? We don't want criminals here, especially if they're illegal. And yet, this is being spun up to say they're taking, kids out of elementary schools and stuff like that. It's just nonsense. So these are the images, as you can see. This is what we would call, peaceful. Yeah. These are peaceful protesters, right? This is really what we call a color revolution. That's what it is. It's not a peaceful protest, and they're just going nuts. This is all peaceful, man. The fire and everything behind you. Don't even think about that. That's not happening. We just very peaceful. They're just wanting to protest, right? That's very peaceful. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there's the peaceful rioters. There's the peaceful ones. Yeah, wow. Really peaceful. This is them being peaceful and blocking the 101. So if you're going to work, I guess you don't go to work, huh? More of it, blocking the freeways. I think this is still the 101. And then, obviously, these are peaceful protests that never turn into burglary. This is them going into an Apple store and raiding the Apple store. Peaceful, guys. Just like we saw peaceful protests in Seattle and Portland, and they were all just nice people, just trying to voice their opinion, right? Looting, robbing, pilfering. And some of them get stuck in there, I guess. They can't get out. That's too bad. They don't know that the Apple phones have a sensor on it that tells them where they're at on their GPS location. So a lot of them had to give those up because it was tracking them. It's so stupid. So this is the epitome of the useful idiots that are out there. You can listen to her.
This is our city, and this was Mexico. You can't kick us out of the land that was ours. Donald Trump! Fascism! Let our people free! Let our people free! Suelta nuestra gente!
What's the windblower for?
Just for the fucking tear gas to blow it back at those motherfuckers. If you have a fucking blower, bring it up! Push them back! We will not do 1992 again with your fucking tanks! I was 12 then! I'm 44 now! I will die for my fucking kids! And all of these young people are here are my fucking kids! Because I'm an LA native mom! These are my fucking children you're fighting! You! Major Bass, if you can hear me, expect me in your office on Monday for attacking my children!
If you could say something to Donald Trump right now, what would you say?
Donald Trump, you can get out of my fucking drawer. You're just Mecca Salma Hayek when they give you the time of day, and because Claudia Sheinbaum make you look like a fucking loser.
Yeah, peaceful. These are calm, normal people. Normal. Yeah, that's a psychopath. That's a useful idiot, too. She might be hired. So then Hollywood and the elites chime in, right? They're always on the wrong side of history. Katy Perry rages about illegal migrants hunted like criminals in their own ancestral home. I'm sorry, Katie, but did you see Department of Homeland Security of the guys I just showed? You got that one wrong. Ilhan Omar's daughter applauds anti-ICE riots, urges death to colonial empire, U.S. and Israel, one oppressor. Thank you very much. What would you expect from Ilhan Omar's daughter? Psychopathic. Disney's Avengers star Mark Ruffalo calls days of violent anti-ICE riots and looting peaceful civil disobedient protests. It's like, hey man, are you just going to gaslight all of us? Because we're not buying it. We're not buying it. Jimmy Kimmel, another gaslighter, is very angry as ICE arrested murderers and child molesters, erupts in left-wing violence. And it's like, yeah, Jimmy, that's who they're arresting. You are supporting that? John Cusack, he's another wackadoo. Says ICE Nazis doing the bidding of Trump, Nazi Trump, pure Nazi law. Look, they have no other talking points than to call everyone a Nazi. They have no other, that's how stupid and ignorant they are. Everything's a Nazi. John Cusack's one of them. This guy probably has really good information. Let's just listen to what he has to say.
Today, here in Los Angeles, agents of ICE raided 15 different neighborhoods. They raided an elementary school.
No, they did not.
Think about the age of the children that means. 6, 7, 8. The parents had to flee, just up and running out. The principal tried to announce that it was a drill. It was clear that it was not a drill. The principal locked down the school, and the children remained at the school crying and screaming and clinging to the teachers because they didn't know whether they would have a mom and dad when they got home. You can believe whatever you want to believe about immigration policy and who immigrants are, but this is not how you do it. This is violence. Trump has admitted ICE is made up of January 6th insurrectionists. It's the Proud Boys. It's the Oath Keepers. After the election, I was wondering, where did they go? After the inauguration, I thought they're awfully quiet. They got their way. They got their boy in office. Why aren't they gloating? Why aren't they parading in the streets? They were getting their equipment together, I think, getting their balaclavas to cover their faces while they oriented themselves in their new job working for ICE. I don't even think it was official. Certainly Congress didn't approve any of this. They don't have badges. They don't have identification. None of the conditions that government employees, federal government employees, are supposed to adhere to. They arrest without warrants citizens as well as non-citizens. They just scoop people up because they're brown. They do a sloppy-ass job, not only because it's racist and because it's illegal, but it's just also just so poorly planned. But raiding an elementary school, no. No, no, no. Terrorizing children for any reason, no. So the question now is...
I gotta get some glasses like that, man. It's really neat, man. With the butterfly wings coming out of them, that's awesome. That is really cool. That's cool, calm, and collective. They're the voice of reason, guys. That guy's the voice of reason. He said it all. He said everything is a lie. Here's another voice of reason.
And I say this as a former party chair, when there is a gathering, a large gathering of people, the anarchists see it as an opportunity and they move in. So always have to be careful whether you see a burned car, a broken window, or whatever it is. It may be the exuberance of the moment, but it may be the anarchist setting in. I heard one of the former police chiefs of Los Angeles speak about this on Sunday.
So it's them getting caught up in the exuberance of the moment to burn cars, steal from Apple, and go crazy, right? That's you just get caught up, guys. I could totally see myself getting caught up in burning cars and going into an Apple store and stealing iPads. I totally could see myself doing that. Really, I can see all of us doing that. That's just what everyone would do, Nancy. Now, another voice of reason. Another voice of reason.
And even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence. Nobody was shot, nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so, when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw.
Yeah, you're right. I won't believe my lying eyes because, yeah, you're right, Maxine, totally. I will believe you rather than my eyes. My eyes are lying to me, what I'm seeing. You're gaslighting me. This was made about him. No violence. There's no violence, guys. People just taking stuff. No violence whatsoever. No stealing. No burglary. Don't believe your lying eyes. You're not seeing that. These are peaceful protesters. You're not seeing it. Maxine told you, and Nancy told you. You're not seeing this. Not seeing this. This is not violence. Those are not highway patrol cars. They just think they are. But they did do all of them. Here's the guys breaking the rocks, throwing the rocks right off the thing. So it's spread. So now we got it in Texas, San Francisco, and they continue. This is Chicago. They blocked traffic in Chicago. So it's not just in LA, it's happening all over the nation. It's going to happen all over the nation this Saturday, apparently, even in Bakersfield. I think it's supposed to have something. But they're blocking traffic. And then again, this is not just a local thing. But you know, they keep telling us it's just grassroots, guys. It's just grassroots. This is, I think this is Texas.
From any of these cases. In fact, Homeland Security Secretary tonight on Fox saying they're going to arrest and charge protesters who are assaulting officers. So this is happening in real time, and it is the
Dallas.
clash also,
That's
Caitlin,
in Texas.
of
so it's not
immigration
LA.
and law and order. Two of the main issues of President Trump all coalescing in this moment as people protest the methods of this administration.
And I also want to show what's happening in Austin. This is what's happening in Dallas. We also have similar scenes that are playing out, protests that are underway in Austin right now. Elliot, when you look at what's happening in Dallas there, I want to go back to that image that we were just showing. Obviously, things seem to be heating up there as you're looking at this scene right now in Dallas where they are clashing with the officers. A lot of people are looking at this, and what I asked to Tom Homan was, is this going to be the new normal going forward in terms of more National Guard being deployed to other cities as well?
Well, and it all depends, quite frankly, Caitlin, on what happens with the legal challenges to this implementation of the National Guard. Now,
so here's Press Secretary giving what's going on?
And I have updates for you on the numbers, by the way. Since June 6th, there have been 330 illegal aliens that have been arrested as part of these riots in Los Angeles. 113 of those illegal aliens had prior criminal convictions. And overall, and this includes arrests of American citizens, there's been 157 people arrested for assault and obstruction-related charges, including the attempted murder of a police officer with a Molotov cocktail. So who is funding these illegal aliens who are coming in with this very professional riot gear? It's a question everyone in this room who cares about truth should be asking. And we encourage your help in trying to get to the bottom of that question. Indita.
Thank you, Caroline. About Elon Musk, he issued an apology.
They go right to another issue. This is happening Saturday, right? June 14th. No Kings movement mobilized. It's all over the nation. I wonder who's orchestrating this. Is it just grassroots? What's behind all of this? Blaze Media had this article. They're not organic. They're funded by NGOs. Rooftop Korean Tony Moon reveals truth about ICE riots to Glenn Beck. Here's his response.
Compare what you went through, the Rodney King riots, the George Floyd riots, and this riot. Is there any difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The 1992 riots were organic. You had different parts of LA County that were upset, and you had fires and looting because the black community was spread out through South LA, Compton, South Central, Ladera Heights, different areas. And you can actually see that, when you looked at the city as a whole from, let's say, Hollywood, you saw the fires from different parts of the city. These riots that are occurring now, which like the 2020, what I call the Antifa BLM riots, and now the 2025 LA riots that are happening down, they're very centralized, and they're not organic. They're being funded by NGOs, and it's a leftist Marxist agenda that's being pushed to make it appear as if there's a widespread support for this. For example, the current riots that are occurring right now, it's just happening in downtown LA. And the curfew that was imposed by Mayor Bass is only for, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it's a 2 square mile radius.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
Or 1 square mile. Yeah, I mean, that's where it is. I mean, anywhere outside of that 1 square mile, life is proceeding as it always has been, and it doesn't look like anything is going on. Whereas the difference in 1992, whether you were in Hollywood, Culver City, which is further out west, and then Hollywood is up north past downtown LA, and obviously south of downtown LA, you had fires, looting. I mean, it was widespread. This isn't anything like, what's going on back in 1992. And it just kind of shows the incompetence of the current leadership of not being able to get their arms around something like this. And they are, because of their lack of leadership and I would say common sense, they're letting these protesters spiral out of control because many of them, the playbook is for them to start in downtown LA at City Hall and then make their way down to the 101 freeway, which really pisses off a lot of people because that's, it's a highly traveled freeway in LA.
It's a parking lot. And you stop me from getting home. I don't care. I don't care if you're free for free candy bars, reindeer, and Santa. I hate your guts if you delay me on that highway. I hate you when I'm driving home.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's no widespread support for this.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday that paid insurrectionists were behind or involved in the protests in Los Angeles. Does the White House have any more details about who they believe is paying these
the president spoke about this last night when he returned from Fort Bragg because, frankly, the president has a lot of common sense. And if you look at some of the imagery that we have received from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and law enforcement who are on the ground, you will see boxes and boxes of very professionalized masks and rioting equipment being dropped off for these protesters. So it's a good question the president is raising and one we are looking into about who is funding these insurrectionists and these rioters and these protesters and these illegal criminals. And I have updates for you on the numbers, by the way. Since June 6th, there have been 330.
So they're on to something. They know there's somebody doing this. And I'm going to show you then in just a bit. So here's a picture. You see that picture where the black truck is? in the picture? That truck stopped and unloaded these bionic shields. They cost around $60 each, and there are boxes and boxes of them being handed out to the protesters. It's just like we saw with Antifa, BLM. It was all staged. They were supplied. They were equipped.
Describe where it just feels like something's going to happen, and you're waiting for it to happen. And you can look around, you see the National Guard in front of the federal building, but as far as this intersection where we're seeing all this take place, there's no local police to be seen. Yeah. And we have people handing out masks and gas masks, and we just saw people graffitiing the sidewalk right in front of this truck, and we've seen people doing burnouts in the street. There's no local law enforcement around.
Let us clarify, because we've been showing a wide shot and from a different angle, a whole lot of officers on the other side of the federal building.
Look, they're just handing them out.
Behind you, and perhaps the visual is obstructed from your point of view, but I can tell you there are many, many, many LAPD cars and officers there that have staged. They are blocking that freeway overpass so protesters.
So they got a picture of him. So those were the bionic shields masks they were handing out to the peaceful protesters, handing them out. Here's the driver. Kash Patel and Josh Hawley said, there's activist groups bankrolling this. They're on it. So here's the first group. The Coalition of Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. They have found 34 million of the NGOs reported 45 million revenue of the fiscal year ending June 2023 was from government grants, primarily from California. The Coalition of Humane Immigration Rights jumped from 12 million to 34 million in government grants. So what ends up happening is these guys have been identified as one of the groups that are behind this funding. SEIU has also been targeted as well as funding this. David Huerta was the president. He was arrested on June 6th in LA during the protest, deliberately obstructing federal agents. So they're going to be looking at SEIU. And this guy is really the main guy behind everything. Neville Roy Singham. He's a socialist supporter of Maoism, according to the New York Times. He's an activist who became a billionaire by pushing Chinese propaganda worldwide. 2019, Singham started a consulting business with partners who are active in the propaganda apparatus of the Chinese Communist Party. Singham has also financed the People's Forum, giving it over $20 million. All three Singham finance organizations were also heavily involved in Colombia's protest. This guy's behind a lot of stuff. New York Post, China-linked tech tycoon Neville Singham has a secret group of operatives at Columbia University. That came out in the New York Post. Singham's wife, guess what? She's Jody Evans, the founder of Code Pink. That shouldn't shock anybody if this guy's involved in communists and now his wife is involved in, well, she is involved in Code Pink. Now I know how they're all connected. All these groups are connected. Guess this. The suspected D.C. Jewish museum terrorist Elias Rodriguez has links to radical groups funded by socialist multimillionaire Neville Singham. You know, the guy who killed the Jewish couple? He's connected to this guy. Now, here's another group that's funded by this Neville guy. Look at the signs. Okay? Okay. Look at the bottom of the sign and who made the sign. Ah, yes. These were made. These are not homemade signs that someone did in their backyard. These were professionally made signs by the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Let's find out who these guys are. The Party of Socialism and Liberation is claimed Marxist-Leninist political party in the United States, founded in 2004. After a split from the Workers' World Party. Their platform is closely related to the broader Answer Coalition. The PSL has funded numerous movements within the Answer Coalition involving movement to liberate Cuba and from statesian imperialism. The PSL had its first Congress in February 2010 in Los Angeles, California. Both the PSL that I just showed you and the Answer Coalition are connected to People's Forum. It's a Manhattan-based nonprofit which has ties to the Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party. And guess who's funding all of them? Singham. All three groups have been involved in anti-Israel protests. The People's Forum have a cadre of operatives embedded in Columbia University, an epicenter of protests according to previous reports. Oh, and guess who's also involved? The Million Voters Project. Total leftist, radical, communist, Marxist. Singham. We Are California. Here's the Million Voters Project website. Urgent call to action. Join us downtown for LA for emergency rally at 4 p.m. They're the one mobilizing. There it is. So what is this? This is what you call a color revolution. This is being foisted by communists, Chinese communists. Okay, so what do they want? What are they trying to do? Well, you have to understand the idea of a color revolution. These are communists, so they got to have a flag. So they're flying the flag of Mexico and the Palestinian flag in all these protests. Have you seen that? And of course, they're using useful idiots, but that's what a color revolution does. It starts focusing in on a particular banner. So that's the Palestinian flag, or wearing the keffiyehs, and you've seen some of the keffiyehs even in the LA crowds. Okay, that tells you it's the same people. And then the other people are just useful idiots. They don't even know what's going on. So what do they try to do? Mass protests, and that's what they're going to do on Saturday. Civil disobedience demonstrations, and typically youth-led activism. They get the youth because the youth don't know any better. Sometimes they do election disputes, but that's not happening right now, except other than challenging Donald Trump. And the symbolism, again, will always be a flag. So they're using the Palestinian flag and the Mexican flag. Media and technology, heavy use of media, especially social media, to mobilize and coordinate. They're doing that. NGO and foreign support, they're getting that. Billionaires are funding this. Often receive funding from strategic support of Western NGO governments and think tanks. Engineered to advance anti-Western, anti-American, anti-nationalism agendas under the guise of promoting democracy. You know, they're telling, well, you're taking away citizens. They're not citizens, they're illegal. These are innocent people. They're not innocent, they're criminal. You're destroying democracy. This is a threat to democracy. No, it's not. This is how you save a democracy. Hybrid warfare. What do you mean? Well, it's called fifth generation warfare. It's non-kinetic, it's psychological, and it's digital. So they intentionally create the scenes to get on the social media and the media so that everybody sees it, and it draws sympathy to them. And who does it draw sympathy from? Does it draw sympathy from you? No, because you know the truth. But guess who it draws sympathy from? Katy Perry, John Cusack, Jimmy Kimmel, and all these other people who have marshmallows for their brains and don't know the difference, that they're being led astray by a color revolution. That's what this is. It's straight out of a Marxist communistic playbook. That's all this is. And what they do is they use soft power. It's not through military might, but shaping public sentiment and civil society. That's what they're doing. Okay. What's going on here? This is what's been happening all through Biden, all the way back to Obama, is they have been trying to destroy America. They hate the West. They've done it to Europe. They're doing it now to here, trying to. And we threw a monkey wrench into the whole matter with Donald Trump. And they cannot stand him. They cannot stand us. They hate us. These are the people that hate America. That's who's doing it. This guy, that billionaire, he hates America. They're communists. But at the core of this, and they're like, well, what does this mean for me as a Christian? They hate you. Because it's not just simply they hate the West or they hate America. They hate Christianity. They hate Israel. They hate the Judeo-Christian ethic that we go by, in which our societies are founded on. and they want to upturn it and put in communism and Marxism. So this is what's at stake. What's being fought right now is over Western society, which is foundational to, for our lives and comes from Christianity. So it totally makes sense that they hate America and they hate Israel. Totally makes sense. And with that being said, where does it stop? Where does this end? Are they going to have a whole summer of love like they did before? I hope not. I hope Trump puts it down. And what's the thing? They're all going to call Trump, they want him to do this because they're going to try to take him to court again and say he misused his power. They're going to try to impeach him. It's the whole thing, again, over and over again. And so that's where we're heading. At the same time this is going on, we have a bigger fish to fry than these crazy communists doing color revolutions. We have Iran not backing down. They confirmed earlier that Iran is actively pursuing a nuclear weapon. U.S. to withdraw diplomats from Iraq amid Iran tensions. We got a problem over there. We got a major problem. If negotiations fail, U.S. prepared to strike Iran, CENTCOM says. So is Israel. This is Donald Trump talking about it.
The main impediment. We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday.
And what's the main impediment to getting a deal?
Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that, because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable.
The main topic for Prime Minister Netanyahu today, when you spoke?
I would say, yeah. I don't know what else. I can talk about the weather.
Well, you can talk about Lebanon.
You get the vibe, don't you? You get the vibe of what's going on. Listen to this. See if you can get the vibe on what he's trying to say about Iran.
Do you think you're going to be able to stop Iran from enriching its...
I don't know. I did think so. And I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to them. But I am much less confident of a deal being made. Okay, so I can sense the buzz. Iran's not wanting to work with them. They sent Steve Witkoff over there, and it's not working. And they're like, I'm reading him loud and clear. We're going to have to deal with them. Okay, so what does that imply? Okay, so we have this political unrest here by these communists. But we've got to go deal with the Middle East, and that means that us and Israel are probably going to go out and take out all nuclear installations in Iran at some point in time. Trump tried to make a deal with them, and of course you can't do deals with them because they're psychopaths. But again, you hit the nuclear installations, that's exactly what needs to happen, but then that brings Russia in. That brings Turkey in. That brings everyone, and that lights up the whole Middle East. So there's going to be some things cooking, man. So you've got political unrest here, and you possibly could have almost World War III going on in the Middle East if we start taking out nuclear installations, which they need to be taken out. You have to take those nuclear. They can't go nuclear. You can't allow them to go nuclear. They'll kill everybody. So what I'm telling you is things are heating up. It's summertime, but man, things are really heating up. And when you hear that from Trump, you're like, that doesn't sound good. They weren't willing to come to the table and say, I'm going to stop your rich uranium. You understand, if they need uranium for energy, there's a whole different way of doing that for energy use. But the way they want to enrich uranium is for nuclear use. So they can't tell us or can't tell anybody with a straight face saying, we just need this for energy. Well, then do it this way. But they refuse to do it the other way. They want this way so they can make a bomb. And that's what no one's going for. So, the question is, it always comes back, what do you think the end times look like? Well, it looks like this. It's crazy. It's nuts. And here's the thing. If you didn't have the Bible and you didn't know where all this is going, you would be really confused. You would be in a lot of chaos. And like all these people that succumb to what's going on in LA and around the world, they're like, they don't know what the truth is. They don't have any bearings. They just go with the flow. And that's what happens to most people. They're not aware of what's happening. You are. Okay. So if that being the case, tell people what's happening. This is not grassroots. It's actually orchestrated from communism. Communists, billionaire communists funding this whole thing. It's nuts. It's satanic. No doubt about that. It's totally satanic. So Glenn Beck said this, and I'll leave you with this. He says they're trying to provoke a civil war. I totally agree with Glenn Beck. You're right. They're trying to provoke a civil war because, look, you're going to push people to the end, and look, I didn't show you these videos, but I saw people trying to get to work in LA. And they got so ticked off, they just ran through the crowd. And they didn't care who they hurt. They just ran through the crowd because I got to get to work, and you idiots are stopping everything. And then that's what I'm talking about. It's just the average person gets fed up, and then the Bubba factor comes out, right? And I saw this one guy just barreling through people, man, because he's going to work. And that starts happening. But here's the thing. They want it to happen to the useful idiots. Because then they'll say, see, we're having a societal problem, and we got to do it. And so it's all trying to foment a civil war. That's what the communists want. What does a color revolution want? They want a revolution. That's what they want. They just don't want to take over academia like they already have. They want to take over the entire country. That's what we're at stake, man. So take this to prayer to the Lord. Try to get the truth out as much as you can, and let's watch what's going on in Iran because, man, that can mean serious stuff going on there. So pray for the peace of Israel, okay? Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what you can show us in your scripture and in what's going on in the world. Help us to be diligent, Father, to be truth tellers, to tell people what's going on, to give them the right information, not from TikTok or Instagram, wherever they're getting their junk, but from you, your word. And help us to be good witnesses, Father, as we learn today in studying your scriptures. Bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Ron, what do we need to do, man?